welcome to 10-Minute News. This is news anchor Barbie with your nightly news update. Tonight we bring you an exclusive report on the downfall of Hasbro Interactive, the wholly owned subsidiary of parent company Hasbro. Under the leadership of Hasbro's third successor, the founder's grandson Alan Hassenfeld, Hasbro's brand portfolio comprised several other notable products, including Monopoly, Batman, Nerf, Play-Doh, Raggedy Ann, Candyland, Scrabble, and Barney. In an attempt to compete more effectively and capitalize on the immediate possibilities of CD-ROM-based games, in 1995, Hasbro formed Hasbro Interactive. Hasbro Interactive was a separate and independent division, headed by President Mr. Duesenberry. It rapidly grew and generated profits. However, in 2000, after significant turmoil and decline in profit, Hasbro decided to sell Hasbro Interactive. So, what led to the downfall of Hasbro Interactive? Arguably, it was Hasbro's business strategy and the lack of effective communication between and within divisions. Tonight we are joined by the three industry experts, Victoria, Jackson, and Rosemary, who will take us through an analysis of the problems that developed at Hasbro Interactive and provide recommendations for the company's future. What do you believe to be the underlying problem in this scenario?
Good evening, news anchor Barbie. I believe the major issue here was the lack of a business strategy overall. The catalyst for the problem occurred in 1999 when it was decided to increase Hasbro Interactive's revenue to $1 billion. However, a multi-year business plan had not been conceived to determine how this increased revenue would be generated. For example, Hasbro Interactive spent money on product development but had no clear roadmap in place. Senior leaders agreed that strategic planning were not Hasbro's strengths.
And what were the consequences of this lack of strategy?
Firstly, there was a failure to consider the liberal standards for the publishing industry when commencing the aggressive sales tactics. They were originally based on the traditional retail toys and games standard. This resulted in product returns from the 1998 holiday season. Also, forward-looking sales plans and product development plans often didn't mesh at all. This contributed to Hasbro Interactive's development team missing very important deadlines and exceeding initial cost projections on several products. Finally, Duesenberry's CFO had little time to manage Hasbro Interactive's financial monitoring systems efficiently. This resulted in the installation of a financial reporting software package, which was optimized for the toy and game business, but it actually didn't fit Hasbro Interactive's business at all. Of course, there are emotional effects, and you could definitely say that senior executives began to lose confidence in Hasbro Interactive. It did lead to a lot of job insecurity.
Thanks for that, Jackson. Rosemary, what do you think the main issue was?
I think it was the communication issues. There was a breakdown in communication within Hasbro Interactive and between divisions within Hasbro. Duesenberry ran Hasbro Interactive as an independent division from Hasbro. He made all operational decisions, including those relating to organizational structure. Several insiders familiar with existing brands transferred to Hasbro Interactive. Duesenberry felt that little interaction and communication was necessary. As a result of this, business information that was considered standard within Hasbro was unavailable within Hasbro Interactive. And because this feeling of independence was among the team at Hasbro Interactive, when Hasbro Interactive initiated a monopoly promotion with Burger King, they were unaware that Hasbro already had a monopoly promotion with McDonald's. Jane Ritson-Parsons, who managed licensing agreements for Hasbro, said, "We have Hasbro personnel at Hasbro Interactive. They do not feel they need to consult with us because they believe they know what's going on with the brand."
Thank you, Rosemary. We've heard what led to the downfall, but who was involved?
Duesenberry, president of Hasbro Interactive, was a key player in the downfall. It was his first experience as a general manager. He had a broad depth of crystallized intelligence with experience in manufacturing, marketing, sales, and product development, but may not have had the strategic level of understanding that was needed. He was an extroverted personality demonstrated by his proficiency at activating others' enthusiasm for futuristic ideas, which enabled him to persuade others like Hassenfeld to support him. His high openness to experience enabled him to become the visionary he was described as, which contributed to his ambitious personality. An in-depth analysis of his character revealed a strength orientation. He was very aware of his own strengths, describing his strongest skill as leadership, but he didn't display deficit orientation, which is an ability to seek feedback from others about your weaknesses.
Looking at Hassenfeld, he could be described as a person who had very agreeableness personality. He described himself as giving Duesenberry the support that he needed, and people began approving things that never would have been approved a year or two earlier. He was of course willing to take business risks. In 1995, Hassenfeld decided it was time once again for his company to take a risk on interactive games. And you could say that this was related to an openness to experience personality. For example, he gave Baum a great deal of latitude as president and COO.
Vecchia is low on openness to experience, preferring traditional business methods. He had a prevention focus with a vigilant strategy to avoid losses, and is risk-averse. He recognized tremendous risks associated with any attempts that Hasbro made to stretch beyond its existing capabilities in traditional toys and games. This implies that he is relatively high in conscientiousness.
Great. So we've heard about the people. Were there any contextual factors contributing to the situation?
The social context for the downfall of Hasbro Interactive can be seen to be the dysfunctional team dynamics and workplace culture. The Hasbro Interactive team, as an independent division of Hasbro, had control over their spending and reporting, and Hasbro Interactive's annual planning and review cycle did not interact with those of other divisions. Their isolation from Hasbro was further enhanced by Dusenberry's belief that a low level of communication was alright, as a number of experienced people had moved across to Hasbro Interactive. This independence created a diffusion of responsibility, with nobody standing up to say that the growth was too rapid, despite stating when interviewed that they felt that Dusenberry should have stopped earlier.
Increasingly it became clear that there were financial and operational problems within Hasbro Interactive. A power struggle developed between the newly installed Group COO, Baum, and Dusenberry. Firstly, it was Baum's introduction of monthly meetings with all business unit heads, including Dusenberry. Secondly, Baum hired Charlie McCarthy as Dusenberry's COO and Jackie Daya to replace the CFO, both of whom were told to monitor the costs. You could say that the fast-paced, risk-taking culture at Hasbro Interactive was an extension of the high emotion-fueled environment created by the division's rapid growth to produce a very individualistic culture. Because of the way in which it was set up, Hasbro's bonus plan incentivized Hasbro Interactive to reach unrealistic revenue targets. Then, when in 1999 a target of $1 billion in revenue was set, this individualistic culture intensified, with senior leaders observing behavioral changes and altering decision-making.
Attribution theory can be used to understand the different perspectives of some of the people and situations that Hasbro Interactive found itself in. Attribution theory is a type of social thinking which sees individuals determine causal explanations for their own or someone else's behaviour or situation by crediting either the person's internal disposition or external factors. For example, CEO Alan Hassenfeld is noted as admiring Dusenberry's creativity and capability, whilst Dave Wilson stated that Dusenberry had a combination of intellect, product creativity, and a tremendous drive to succeed. This positive internal attribution of his strengths clouded Dusenberry's weaknesses that crucially included finance and operations skills. Dusenberry engaged in external attribution when he blamed the failure of Hasbro Interactive on the interference of Hasbro. He stated that Hasbro Interactive was effectively managed prior to Hasbro stepping in, and in his eyes, interfering to get a piece of the success.
So how does this all tie together?
Hassenfeld's openness to experience influenced him to give freedom and independence to Dusenberry and Baum. Overall, they were relatively extroverted in nature, Dusenberry, Hassenfeld, and Veronica, and also their company culture of fostering creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship contributed to the desire to rapidly increase growth in Hasbro Interactive.
Great. Thank you for all your insights. Do you have any recommendations for what Hasbro could do to prevent this happening again in the future?
Hasbro's immediate action should be to continue regular meetings with all divisions as previously implemented by COO Baum to foster relationships and foster communication between Hasbro divisions, which would influence information sharing, a positive competitive environment. Hire COO externally, preferably a COO from another organization so they have the financial and project management skills. Hire CFO internally because this would ensure continuity in the financial management of the organization, and they would have the intimate understanding of the problems that occurred in the downfall and potentially how to avoid them in the future.
Recommendations if or when a new division is created are that there has to be a greater integration between divisions and more monitoring from the beginning. A clearer reporting structure and change of command should be established. This would promote better understanding and help to prevent the new division straying too far from the goals and objectives of the parent company. In the next review cycle, they should engage in 360-degree feedback to identify training needs for individuals, which would maximise performance. These should be conducted mid and at the end of the year, which would also facilitate greater communication. The bonus plans should be restructured to prevent unrealistic and aggressive revenue targets, which in turn would reduce behavioural changes and high-risk decisions from being made. Hasbro should also hire a more diverse workforce to include more introverts and more women.
That sounds like a great set of recommendations for Hasbro, but they'll never be as good as Mattel. Thank you for joining us tonight. This was a special report by news anchor Barbie on 10 Minute News.